There was a scene between the three of us that I felt like I wasn't quite getting it, and we both knew that. Like, I know it wasn't like, it was like an unspoken thing. He'd come in and he'd look at me and I'd be like, give me another take. And he'd be like, yeah, you know what I'm looking for. And I'd be like, yeah, just let's roll.
You were incredible today.
Thank you.
I mean, it wasn't even like tennis. It was an entirely different game.
When we got to Boston, we had 6 weeks prior to actual filming where we did the tennis training and the physical training, but then we also were in rehearsals. And we spent hours just at a table, and not dissimilar to a play in theater where we just sit down with Justin Kritzky, who wrote the play, and Luca, and we would just do scene work, you know. We would do scene work. We would read scenes bit by bit at a time. We would dissect them. We would be forensic. We would dive into the characters, and we would talk about everything. And so not only were we doing the actual development and sculpting on a foundational level, but then we were going off and putting the clothes on and actually forming who these characters are.
Zendaya, at the premiere, we talked a little bit about you wanting to work with Luca again. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you can kind of talk a little bit about what it was.
I think for me, it's his, like, instincts. I think it's sometimes, you know, you get this magical thing where, like, with a director where you feel like they just get it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but, like, from the moment we spoke about the script, he just got it. Like, he understood what kind of film this should be, how it needed to be portrayed, how it needed to be captured, and who the characters were in a really deep sense. And I think he cares about performance first and kind of leads with that. And also, while I feel like I agree with his sensibility most of the time, he also comes up with things that I'm like, what? Like, when he says it, I'm like, that's a weird choice, but I'm gonna try it. And he's always right. He's always right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, you know, to me that was fascinating to try to figure out if I could catch things before he did. I'm like, let me try to figure out if this is what he's looking for, you know. But we had like an unspoken thing. I remember typically it was like 1 to 2 takes on most things, which blew me away because typically I'm like, it takes a while, right? But he just was very confident and knew what he wanted. But there was a scene between the three of us that I felt like I wasn't quite getting it, and we both knew that. Like, I know it wasn't like, it was like an unspoken thing. He'd come in and he'd look at me and I'd be like, give me another take. And he'd be like, yeah, you know what I'm looking for. And I'd be like, yeah, just let's roll. You know what I mean? So it was like this unspoken thing of knowing, and I appreciated that kind of interaction.
Did Timothy kind of like prime you ahead of time, like here's what to expect?
I don't know. I think I definitely did talk to Timothy about him, but I think it was all high praise, and I think Luca was part of giving him a role that I think changed the trajectory of his career and his life, and he was brilliant in it. And so I was a fan from that, and continue to be one.
Obviously, sports are part of what makes them interesting is like they're unpredictable, right? But in a movie, you're trying to control the sort of outcome of it. And so I was curious if there were any scenes that like were, you had to, it took a long time to get because you were having to like make a ball go a certain, or like there was just challenges with that.
There were plenty. I mean, it's true that, filmmaking is an extremely technical art form, and if you add 3 actors who don't play tennis into that, and you've got a camera this close and you're wielding a racket around, you do have to be quite technical about those things. But thankfully, the way Luca and Sayambu, our brilliant cinematographer, worked, there was so much pace. We worked very quickly. Did 1 or 2 takes, so I hear, and
but spoiler alert, no ball.
Yeah, but but a lot of the time, no ball, because a lot of the wider shots there is a ball, and there are moments where you can't avoid. But really, if we did have a ball, it'd be a nightmare. And the other thing to say is we did have body doubles who were brilliant, and our pros, and we very quickly learned that Luca would say to the body doubles, okay, so you're going to do this rally, and you're going to hit it here, and then it's going to hit here. And you can be a complete pro. It's very difficult to choreograph tennis for real. it's unpredictable in its nature. So yeah, it was a very technical process. You know, although it looked very free fall.
I started playing tennis like a year and a half ago, and you have to be willing to look really stupid when you're actually playing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess the no ball does make sense. You can kind of have a little more grace, probably.
I always had an issue like trying to like when the miss hits happen, and I was supposed to be like, oh, I didn't know the ball was gonna do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, that
Yeah.
was always what I kind of
Yeah.
struggled with.
And Zendaya, you obviously have been producing more, and I think you're kind of seems to be like solidifying your role as a producer more. I'm curious what like made you want to get involved in producing to begin with.
I think I started when I was back in my Disney days. And I think it was probably just because of my experience of like really just kind of being a child actor and much of that being like just absolutely no control over like your character, what happens, and just being like, well, you know, it's written, you show up and you do it. And really that's just it. And while I'm grateful for the opportunity to work and always, and sometimes it's nice not to have that responsibility. There are times and moments where when something feels very special that you want to creatively have a seat at the table, and you never really know what kind of people you're going to work with. So sometimes, you know, you might luck out and get a group of, you know, creatives or a director that is open to your ideas, but then you also might not. So having that title allows for you to say, well, I actually can have a say here about what happens to me and my character, which is really, really helpful and allows for you to be able to protect yourself, protect your fellow actors, because I feel like we joke about it being like, you know, department head of the actor department. But yeah, I think it's really just that, being able to protect the material and the work and do it creatively.
That's cool. Ever think you might direct?
I would love to one day. I think it would require a little bit more confidence in my abilities, and I'm working on that.
You alluded to this, but, you know, your Disney days. It's funny, I was thinking about, like, Zac Efron sort of getting his kind of critical acclaim finally for Iron Claw. And
I'm
I
very
feel like,
happy for him. We love Zach.
yeah, yes, you guys work great together. But it's funny, you know, I think for a lot of people, it is hard for them to kind of break out of that image in people's minds. But it seems like for you were able to do it pretty quickly.
I think for me, it's just been about taking my time and going project by project and finding things that are that speak to me and challenge me. And like I said, we've kind of talked about this in other interviews, but it wasn't like entirely strategic. It's not like I was like, I need to do this specific thing at this time and this and this and this. I think the right roles came to me the same way that I was looking for them. And when it's right, you just have an instinctual or gut reaction to it and to the material, and the fear kind of goes away. And so, yeah, just the right things happen at the right time, and it wasn't about rushing or trying to prove anything to anyone, rather just take my time and prove it to myself, really, with each project. They're like, no, you can do this, right? And it's been a beautiful journey. And I think with each thing, like for example, like even Euphoria, while that was a departure, I was still playing a teenager, you know. So it's like, just take your time. And people have been able to grow along with me. And we were at the LA premiere a few days ago, and there was a girl there who I'm assuming is probably an adult now, but she was showing me a picture of her when she was younger, like probably 9 or 10 years old, with like a Shake It Up t-shirt, and she was like, I grew up with you, you know, and that stuff means the world to me. And now she's at this premiere, and she's like legally allowed to watch an R-rated movie, you know, so it's really special in that way.